Hello and welcome to Did You Know Gaming Extra. Today we're taking a look at a varied selection of indie games. Whether we're aware of it or not, most of us play indie games all the time. Minecraft, Among Us, Stardew Valley, Undertale, they're all indie games. And with their humble beginnings, we think all of them deserve a bit more love and attention, such as a dedicated video by a large YouTube trivia channel, for example. So, let's jump in. One of the earliest indie hits of this millennium was Cave Story. Created by just a single developer known as Pixel, the game spawned several ports and remakes following the success of the original free-to-play PC version. These included versions for the Nintendo WiiWare service and the 3DS, both of which were significant overhauls and recreations of the original game. These versions had some minor adjustments to the game's dialogue, though not for any contentious reason, and more as a joke. In the game's original version, the character of Balrog makes his debut by busting through a wall, exclaiming, "Huzzah!" But with the game's WiiWare and 3DS editions, the line spoken is changed to, "Oh yeah." This change was made because Balrog's wall-breaking entrance is reminiscent of the Kool-Aid Man, who has the iconic catchphrase, "Oh yeah!" Another indie game that's been around for quite some time is Terraria. The game came out of nowhere, effectively downsizing the already immensely successful Minecraft into a 2D perspective, and with it, creating its own massively popular sandbox survival adventure that saw ports to almost every major home format: PC, 3DS, PlayStation 3, 4, Vita, Wii U, Switch, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and mobile. Impressive for a game that, during its beta phase, used edited sprites from the early Final Fantasy games until being redone to distance itself. The beta also had a gun that was exclusively added to assist developers during the game's testing phase, the Zappinator. The gun was extremely overpowered during the game's earlier stages, prior to hard mode, letting the devs simply eliminate enemies so they wouldn't get in the way. While the weapon was found in the desktop version's data, it could not be found in-game. However, it was eventually added to the 3DS edition. This was most likely due to the game now being on a Nintendo console, and the gun clearly being modeled after the NES Zapper peripheral. With this said, the gun did not appear in the now unsupported Wii U version, nor does it appear in the still updated version on the Nintendo Switch, though perhaps it will show up one day. Another game that's already gotten some love on this channel is the much-loved Undertale. Although some hate the game's fanbase, it's generally agreed that the game has great characters and a compelling narrative. With such a story-driven game, spoilers being spread online was a real concern in the game's early days, with the game's creator Toby Fox seemingly doing all he could to prevent people from being spoiled. To try and curb spoilers surrounding the game's events, a note was left within the game's data for those that would reverse engineer it to find certain graphical assets. Since these graphics can potentially be a huge spoiler for later parts of the game, Toby Fox included a note titled ABC11110, a name chosen to make sure it appeared as the first file alphabetically if the game's graphics were extracted. The note says, "Please don't upload these huge sprite sheets online. Just because most weird things here are used, I'd rather them be seen in context first. Wait like a year first. If you're just ripping normally seen sprites for Sprite as resource or something, I don't care if you use these to make it easier though." This note was directed towards users of the Sprite as resource, which hosts sprite sheets for several games, encouraging users to remove any spoiler-heavy sprites from the sheets prior to uploading it within the game's first year. The note was replaced in update version 1.001 to a new note which reads, "You know what I hate? That's Beepis. The taste, the smell, the texture. Hey, you're drooling." This note is in reference to an NPC in Earthbound, found in Moonside, who claims to hate whatever food the player chose as their favorite during the game's opening. As the note had little meaning, a Reddit user contacted Fox to confirm that it meant he was happy for people to view the game's sprites, to which he responded, "Everyone's seen all the sprites at this point, I don't really care now." But indie games aren't simply a modern trend. Some have been around for decades. Revolution Software is a name many gamers of a certain generation would know, having created the much-beloved adventure series Broken Sword. These games saw commercial success, but by 2005, the company's model for commercial game development had become unsustainable, and they had to close the studio. But fate had a surprise in store for the team, with Apple contacting them directly a few years later, suggesting they release their game on the iOS platform. The game was a hit on the platform, and the company built themselves back up. Apple even included Broken Sword in a promotion during 2011. This gave them a new audience of 2.5 million people, many of whom would be the new generation of gamers, allowing them to continue creating games to this day. Another successful indie series is the SteamWorld franchise. While the games began with SteamWorld Tower Defense, the series didn't hit a wider audience until the release of SteamWorld Dig, helped in part by Nintendo of Europe contacting developers Image and Form to include the game in a European Nintendo Direct. Work on the game was completed on June 28, 2013, with a planned release date of August 8th. However, the team decided they'd release the game a day early in order to coincide the launch with the Nintendo Direct, which helped increase sales of the game thanks to the Direct's exposure. There had originally been plans for an additional area to be included in the game, though this was dropped because of time constraints. A similar story also occurred with the title's sequel, SteamWorld Dig 2. It was originally intended to feature a sunken city, as well as a set of icy caves that had been formed from giant cooling devices that regulated the temperature of Vectron, a location that was also supposed to have a second area, though this was also dropped, with the team choosing to make extra challenge levels for those who completed the game. These challenges were originally known as the Hell Caves, but this was changed to the Cave of Trials. SteamWorld Dig 2 also managed a pretty tremendous feat in 2017. When late into the year, Nintendo polled several Japanese players regarding which Switch games they recommend to their friends most. Because of the timing of this poll, the results were rather predictable. Breath of the Wild taking top spot, followed by Mario Odyssey, but the third being SteamWorld Dig 2, impressive considering the scale between the three titles. Now for one of our personal favourite indie games, Crawl, which was made by the two-person Australian developer Powerhoof. The title delighted gamers with its interesting blend of a cooperative and competitive multiplayer. In the roguelike brawler, players navigate randomly generated dungeons towards a boss battle, but with the twist of having their friends inhabit the bodies of monsters and demons blocking their path. One of these monsters in particular stands out from the crowd, and the story behind it is interesting to boot. It seems that from the beginning of their time developing the title, Powerhoof was set on the idea of including none other than Valve co-founder Gabe Newell as a playable boss in the game, having designed his sprite before the game was even released. Less than a year after the successful early access campaign, artist, designer, and former hat owner of Powerhoof, Barney Cumming, decided to reach out for permission to use Gabe's likeness. The email was as follows. Hello Gabe, my name is Barney Cumming, and I have a little indie game called Crawl which is currently on early access. I am writing to ask permission to use your likeness in my video game. I recently realized my silly fantasy of animating you as a powerful god in the game. You can view a GIF here. The email then makes a plea to Gabe, listing 5 points to consider. That Gabe will be the most powerful character in the game, that he'll also transform into his current in-real-life bearded form comparable to a Super Saiyan, that Barney would let Gabe use his own likeness in Gabe's games, that his friend would put Gabe's favorite animal in Crossy Road, and a final point simply saying, please. The email must have gotten someone's attention at Valve because a representative replied expressing that Gabe had given his blessing to move forward with the character. Now if the player sets their name to HL3, Gabe will appear as a monster in-game. Another game we like is The Darkroom, which is available on Steam. The title was made by a friend of the channel, John Robertson, who told us a particularly painful story behind the game's creation. Whilst recording The Darkroom's motion capture and voiceover, John went ever so slightly overboard with his efforts, and gave himself a ruptured hernia. John told us, "We spent a week recording the mocap and VO. A week of me in this studio for 8 hours a day just screaming and throwing myself around and drinking whiskey. And about 4 days in, I could feel this pain at the top of my stomach. The next day, I felt this huge lump. I pushed it, and it went back into my guts with this slow, wet plop. I didn't tell the studio, because I wanted to get the game finished, so I just drank more whiskey, kept screaming, got on the plane, got back to the UK, went to a doctor, and yep, I'd ruptured my abs and a bit of my stomach wall was jutting out. Most blokes get hernias lifting stuff. I just yelled until my guts decided they'd Hadouken themselves out of me." And now it's time for this episode's random piece of trivia. Today we're taking a look at the game that got about 1 million people to buy a Dreamcast, Shenmue. The game's orphaned kitten was actually based on designer Manabu Takimoto's pet cat, Sasuke. During development, a game designer came to Manabu's desk and asked to borrow the picture of Sasuke when he was a kitten. In one cutscene, the player can talk to Megumi Mishima about naming the cat with 4 possible options, one of which being Sasuke. If players choose Sasuke, Ryo will say, so she can grow up to be big and strong, like a ninja. But Megumi rejects the name, because it's a boy's name and the cat in the game is female. In an interview, the game's producer, Yu Suzuki, stated, "We knew it had been modeled after Takimoto's cat, so we wanted to leave the name as Sasuke, as a remnant of that. But eventually someone was like, who named this cat Sasuke? And we had to change it." Did you also know that there was a Russian TV show about video games that incorrectly labeled Joe and Mac as a ripoff of a bootleg Mario game? Or that it's possible Nintendo planned to distribute additional NES games to be played within Animal Crossing for the Nintendo GameCube? To check out these facts, why not take a look at the videos on screen, and don't forget to just watch any videos that you actually have any interest in. I'm pretty sure that there's going to be something, so check out the videos. Check out some of the videos. Check out some videos. Just look at the videos. Look at some videos. Whatever they are, I'll be happy if you look at them. If you don't look at them, I'll be sad. So just check out some more of our videos, guys. You'll have fun. You'll have fun. It'll be good. It'll be good.